The news broke on a quiet Saturday morning, not from Washington, but from a press conference in Geneva. Mark Carney stood at a podium announcing a new global reserve asset backed by a coalition of central banks. The world of finance held its breath. This was a direct challenge to America's most potent weapon, its currency. In the White House, disbelief turned to rage. President Trump, caught off guard, saw it as a personal and national betrayal. The dollar was more than money. It was the foundation of American power. Now that power was under attack. Global markets churned. U.S. allies were forced to choose stick with the old system or join the new alternative. Carney's plan wasn't just an idea, it was a fully formed blueprint, backed by major economic powers in Europe and Asia. This was the first salvo in a new kind of war, a war for the future of the global order. For decades, the world had accepted American financial leadership as a given. The U.S. dollar was the sun around which all economies revolved. This system brought stability but also gave Washington immense power. Now that power was being questioned in the most fundamental way. The unthinkable had happened. A quiet central banker had challenged a superpower. In the sudden quiet after the shock, one thing was clear. The world had changed in a single morning. The old certainties were gone. A new, uncertain era had just begun. The shockwaves spread instantly. Allies scrambled to respond. The financial world was on edge. Carney had not just opened a debate, he had forced a decision. The U.S. faced a challenge it never expected. The global order was no longer unshakable. The future was up for grabs, and the world was watching. The game had changed. Who is the man who dared to challenge the United States? Mark Carney is no outsider. Born in Canada, he worked at Goldman Sachs, then led the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. He's known for his intelligence, calm, and deep understanding of global finance. Carney was among the first to warn about the risks of climate change and the dangers of over-reliance on the US dollar. He built trust with leaders across Europe and Asia, not as a politician, but as a technocrat. His credibility made him uniquely powerful. Carney's move didn't come from a rival like Putin or Xi, it came from within the Western financial system itself. He quietly built a coalition, convincing others that the risk of inaction outweighed the risk of change. He wasn't an enemy at the gates, he was the architect who decided the foundation was no longer safe. And he had a blueprint for something new. Carney's background explains why his move was so effective. He used his insider status to unite allies, not just to criticize. His revolution was quiet, but it shook the world. The ultimate insider had become the ultimate disruptor, and the world was forced to listen. Carney's plan was simple yet revolutionary. A synthetic hegemonic currency, or SHC. Managed by a network of central banks, its value would be based on a basket of major currencies: euro, yen, pound, yuan, and more. The goal, a stable, neutral asset for global trade, offering an alternative to the US dollar. The dollar's dominance gave America immense advantages: cheaper borrowing, global sanctions power, and control over international trade. Carney's SEC targeted this privilege, giving countries a choice. Nations facing US sanctions could switch to the SC, weakening America's financial leverage. The SEC would use blockchain technology for faster, cheaper, more transparent transactions. Crucially, Carney's plan was gradual, not a call to dump dollars but to diversify and reduce risk. This made it attractive to countries tired of US policy swings and worried about America's growing debt. Carney didn't build a battering ram, he opened a new gate. The SEC was a safe, gradual path away from total dollar dependence. It was a technological and political statement. The genius was in its timing and subtlety. The world now had a real alternative. The US monopoly was broken. The financial landscape would never be the same. The future of money had arrived, and it wasn't American. Why was this move so shocking? It shattered the belief that the world had no choice but to rely on the US. After World War II, the dollar was supreme, first backed by gold, then by trust. No other currency could compete. The dollar was the only game in town. This dominance became central to American identity and power. But Carney's move revealed that an alternative could be built, not by rivals, but by America's own allies. Key US partners in Europe and Asia had quietly joined Carney's coalition. They were tired of Washington's unpredictability and wanted a more stable, multilateral world. America's own actions, sanctions, trade wars, political chaos, had eroded trust. Dependence on the dollar became a vulnerability, not a benefit. Carney simply provided the map and the vehicle. The suddenness of the move was a masterstroke. By the time Washington noticed, the coalition was formed, and the plan was public. America had been outmaneuvered, not on a battlefield but in the boardrooms of central banks. The old order was unraveling. The world was no longer willing to wait for America to lead. The balance of power had shifted. The US was no longer unchallenged. The age of dollar dominance was ending. President Trump's reaction was fury and confusion. The dollar was his ultimate leverage. Now, Carney threatened to take it away. Trump lashed out on social media, calling Carney irrelevant and accusing allies of betrayal. But his usual tools, tariffs, threats, were useless against a digital currency and a network of central banks. Punishing allies would only push them further away. Trump's team was divided. Some urged caution. Others wanted a financial war. Cutting off central banks from the US system was risky. It could trigger a global meltdown. The White House was paralyzed, caught between aggression and restraint. Trump, a master of bilateral fights, now faced a united front. His public statements were contradictory, threatening one day, dismissive the next. The world saw a US president unable to control the narrative. For the first time, American power looked fragile. The crisis exposed deep divisions in Washington. The old playbook no longer worked. The president was cornered. The world was watching, and America's response would shape the future. The stakes had never been higher. The era of easy dominance was over. To understand this moment, look at recent history. After the Cold War, the US was the world's only superpower. Military, economic, and cultural influence unmatched. The dollar's dominance was a natural part of this unipolar world. But cracks appeared, costly wars, the 2008 financial crisis, and the rise of China. The world became multipolar. Trump's America First policies accelerated the shift, questioning alliances, starting trade wars, and abandoning global agreements. Allies grew anxious, unsure of Washington's next move. Carney's move was a response to these cracks, not an attack out of the blue. The real problem was the erosion of trust. Countries tolerated dollar dependence because they trusted the US to manage the system responsibly. That trust was gone. Carney and his coalition didn't create the cracks, they saw them and decided to build something new. The American century was ending, the world was ready for change. The foundation had shifted, the future would be built on new ground, and America had to adapt or be left behind. The world's reaction was swift and revealing. European powers like Germany and France quickly signaled support. They wanted more independence from the US. The new currency offered them a way to reclaim economic sovereignty. In Asia, Japan was cautious but interested. China was publicly supportive, letting Carney take the lead for legitimacy. For developing nations, the SHC was a lifeline, protection from US policy swings and sanctions. Organizations representing the Global South endorsed the plan, seeing a fairer system. Not every country was on board. UK and Australia hesitated, torn between loyalty and logic. The world was being forced to choose stay in the American-led order or join the new alternative. The old Cold War lines were gone. Now, the dividing line was about the structure of the global system itself. Carney's move turned a theoretical debate into a real choice. The world was ready for change. The US could no longer take loyalty for granted. The balance was shifting. This twist revealed a fundamental change in global power. For centuries, power meant armies and economies. The US mastered both. But now, network power, coalitions, connectivity, and trust matters most. Carney, a master of networks, built a coalition that bypassed old American structures. He showed that expertise and consensus can challenge a superpower. Trump's tactics, threats, and deals were ineffective against a resilient, decentralized network. You can't bully a network, attack one part and the rest endures. Influence and trust now rival military and economic might. Technocrats, not just populists, can wield real power. Carney's move was a victory for expertise and cooperation. The rules of power are being rewritten. America's dominance is no longer guaranteed. The world is more complex, more connected. The future belongs to those who can build networks, not just armies. The new era has begun. The Carney-Trump confrontation signals the end of an era. The age of unquestioned American dominance is over. The US remains powerful, but its ability to dictate terms is weakened. The dollar's status as the sole anchor is no longer guaranteed. A multipolar financial world is emerging. This brings uncertainty and opportunity. The decline of a single dominant power could mean chaos or a more balanced system. The future is not yet written. For the US, this is a moment for reflection, respond with anger or adapt to the new reality. Rebuilding trust and leading through partnership is the path forward. Power is no longer a monopoly. Carney's move proved the global order is shifting. The American century has given way to the global century. The future is here, and it's not what it used to be.